G'day guys, welcome back to the next installment of the DORA project. This is a follow-up and part 2 of the installation of our Lowrance sounders. In our previous installment, we went through the installation of the transducer and the power cable, but this episode is all about mounting up our MFD to our console and the bow using RAM mounts, but also the inclusion of a Berley Pro visor. You guys, I'm sure you could work it out, but I'm going to share with you a few considerations that I've made in why I'm mounting things in a particular location and why I'm using these products. Then hopefully we should be able to get out on the water and have a fish and see how we all go. So guys, what we're going to do is start at the console here. And the reason we're doing that is because this is going to be our base unit and I'm also sitting here. I am limited in the placement of my sounder at the console here because I previously had a sounder fitted up and there was already an existing hole in my console. Whilst I could probably get somebody to weld up the holes, I didn't want to do that, and the placement's actually not too bad. With the hole in the top of the console, I've purchased this component here. This is a RAM component. The part number is RAP403U. And what that does is it covers up the hole, but it also has a little notch in the back here that'll allow for the cable to run out of the hole, out from underneath this, and then into the sounder. As for the RAM rig, I've got the smallest joint here for the 1.5 inch balls. So the circular base will obviously mount on top of this platform. And then we have our aluminium frame from Lowrance that'll mount to the rectangular base. Very straightforward. We're going to just start drilling into the console, fill up some, or make some more holes after I've filled up some holes, and again, pretty straightforward, but we're going to show you anyway. So what we've got is our ROP whatever, our base piece, and we're going to obviously put it into position as we'd like it. We're going to grab our other piece as a bit of a placeholder, see if we're happy with that. This goes on top and we go, sweet, that's the position that I want. So I've got my square basically parallel with the edges of my, my console here. And that's just so I have the outlet notch for the cables to be at the back. My first hole marked up, I'm going to put my safety goggles on. I've got a 3mm drill bit, it's nice and sharp. I'm going to check that there's not much that this can interfere with on the underside, and I'm just going to run this pilot hole through. So we've got a 3mm pilot hole there. Now, I'm going to go over to my 5mm drill bit. This is brand new, just pulled it out of the packet, and we're going to go for it again. So we have our first hole. We're going to button this up so it's obviously not going to move. So we're going through the base ball, through our little pedestal, and I'm using M5 hardware here, not the stuff that came with the RAM mount, just because I don't want to be doing up a nylock nut from the inside right now. This is now secure enough that I can give it micro adjustments to see where I'm happy with it all. And for me, that looks pretty good. Now I'm gonna spot drill with my 5mm drill bit, not with the smaller one. This will give us a more accurate center for where to go through. So make sure you take note of which holes you're going through in this top array, making sure that your drill is square with your surface. If it's off to the side, you're gonna have a bit of trouble. So that's all spot drilled. Now we can pull the thing up and then we can go again. We've already undone this, so we can now pull it up, and now we have exposed our few holes. Time to spot drill. Spot drill, just gonna go back through with our 5mm. Some people might just go straight into bolting down your RAM mount. And to a degree, there might not be anything wrong with it. If this is timber, go for it. And if it was timber, you'd probably use self-tapping screws. But because this is aluminium and I am using stainless steel, I want to put an isolator in here to stop any galvanic corrosion. To get around that, I'm going to be using Duralac. Now, Duralac is an anti-corrosive jointing compound. Inhibits electrolytic corrosion between dissimilar metals. So I'm just going to get a small amount and brush it on the newly drilled holes. Try not to put too much so it doesn't drip through into your cables on the underside there. Now all you want to do is enough to cover the surface. Now I have my 4 M5 screws or bolts, and they're going to go straight down into our holes, and provided we've drilled the holes correctly, this should just pass straight through. And we're down and in. So the next step is obviously bolting it from the underside and being happy with it. That is now tight enough. This is kind of the first time we will get a bit of a better glimpse of how this will all look. Tighten that up. We're going to have our bracket there and our sounder somewhere like that. So the next step is very simple, mounting this directly to our rectangular ram mount. So for the hardware between the ram mount and the Lowrance, you are going to have to go and buy your own stainless hardware. Neither the Lowrance kit or the ram mount come with stuff to bolt the two together. The Lowrance comes with self-tapping screws, which obviously makes sense if you're just going to mount it directly to your console, but that's not what we're doing. I have some M5 by 20mm screws. You could probably get away with M5 by 16. I just couldn't find them at Bunnings, so these will have to do. And you might also notice that I'm not using nylocks, but what I'm going to use is some Loctite on the threads here, and then just cinch them down, and hopefully I never have to worry about these loosening. And those two brackets are now mated. Very pretty. So there we go. So we have our sounder now mounted to the ram mount, and this is a really good time to demonstrate why this is so fantastic, these systems. Now, if I unscrew or loosen the T-handle, I can move it and have it basically pointed all the way to the left. I can have it pointed all the way to the right. I can bring it closer to me. For me, I quite like it in its tallest orientation. In this position here, and as I would sit in the driver's seat or the driving position, I can still see perfectly to the nose of the bow. It's not impeding my vision at all, which is fantastic. So that's the basics of the benefits of a ram mount. As well as that, there are different sizes. So at the front here, we have a low ram mount, which is fantastic because I can still see over the bow, and it's not, you know, impeding my vision. But for the bow mounted console, I'm going to use a much larger midsection. And there are a few reasons why I'm going to do this. One of them is so I don't have to bend as low to the sounder if I want to place a waypoint. It also helps with visibility of the sounder, so it's a little closer to my eyes, but also, and probably more importantly, is getting it away from the splashing of the water as it's moving along. As these Elite 9-inch sounders are touchscreen, I want to avoid any reason for the water to hit the screen. I don't want it to smear and make it less visible, and I also want to make sure that it functions all the time. So that's the main reason why I'm going with this. I don't want to run through the entire same process again at the front there, because you guys have seen it. You just re-watch it again, what we've done here. We'll just do a quick time lapse for the front there and show you how it's mounted to the front. It was nearly identical to the console mount, but there were a couple of things that I had to do differently because of the positioning. So you would have noticed that I did the exterior mounting holes first, and then I was able to drill the center hole to run the cabling. I did that because I had the freedom to place this wherever I wanted, whereas the console I was restricted to that existing hole. That obviously made it a lot neater, and the cable runs a little bit smoother here. The other thing was I used the larger fender washers for this front position because this sheet metal is a little bit thinner than the console. And I wanted a little bit more surface area and clamping pressure across this face. There is a little bit of movement, and I can see here in the light and the reflection that there is a bit of movement on this panel, but I don't think it's going to be enough for me to be concerned about. If it is, later I might make some larger plates in the underside of this, but I don't think that's too much to be worried about. The other thing that you wouldn't have seen in that time lapse is I've added some little dome nuts to the bottom of this. It's just to finish off the edges of those bolts. I didn't want anything sharp to catch on, and I also had them handy, so they just went on really nice and easy. Alright guys, so the next step is to fit up our Berley Pro visor to the units. I've already gone ahead and done this front one, and it is super simple, which is awesome. The Berley Pro kits come with the appropriate hardware and a little bit of an instruction here. It's only small because it is so simple. We've obviously got everything mounted up on the back here, but for this process it's easier to take it all off. So I'm going to take out the turn knobs entirely from each side. Put those to the side, take off our bracket and ball mount, and then we take off our screen protector. The instructions state to take off the four corners of the four corner moldings to be able to thread through our hardware. And again, that's really simple. We just need a small flat bladed screwdriver. I don't like to put my screwdriver into this component here. That manages to actually put a few marks in the other unit, but it ends up getting hidden. I prefer to go into this rubberized section, go underneath and peel it up like that. That way there is no marking on the corner moldings at all, and it's all protected as well. You're not going to see any marks from levering off these panels. So, same thing. We're not going to lose these, we need to refit them, and 4. After we've removed the covers are the through holes. I don't know if you can see it very easily on the camera there, but there's a through hole on every corner. So just here, on every corner. Now those holes are large enough to thread through the hardware that Berley Pro provides, which is an M3, what is it? M3 by 25mm panhead screw. So the visor mounts to the rear flat face of our unit. And you can again see the 4 through holes that come through from each corner. So it goes over onto the back face here. And this is why it's easiest when you remove all of the bracketry. And we're gonna go one at a time, placing the hardware through. So it will be tricky for you to see here, but I'm just going to go through the top left corner first. Go washer, followed by the nylock. Very simple. Washer and nylock. So we have all of our hardware now finger tight and in position. The next step for us is using some pliers to hold the nylocks, and then a small screwdriver to do it up. Again, very simple, but now that you've got tools and you're kind of near your screen without a screen protector, just be careful that you don't drive anything in. That goes without saying, but sometimes it helps to have a reminder. It's a very small and light visor, so it doesn't need crazy amounts of torque. So now our visor is fixed. We can hold the whole thing with the visor. And then the last thing is reapplying your corner moldings. So we just go back in and you got to listen for the audible click and you know it's in position. All four corners. And it's practically done. The reason why I've got some Berley Pro Visors is because the unit is a touch screen. You want to minimize as much water getting onto the screen to make it as easy to use as possible. Whilst these units are capable of working with moisture, it's about smearing and making the screen less readable. As well as that, obviously these visors cut any glare down and you can see a little bit clearer. But the other fantastic thing that I didn't realize until owning the unit is the visors don't get in the way of using your screen protectors. So they still click on very easily, and then if I turn back here, they just come off as easily as well. So that's fantastic. The only other thing, and I'm just going to do a time lapse of it, is I have a Rooster router from Berley Pro. Now, the intent of this is to stop any rooster tailing of the transducer, because it's quite a long transducer, and this should essentially cut down any spray back. And again, we're quite close to the back there. We don't want to get wet, and the transducer is on the console side. So that just mounts in on top of our transducer plate, or between the two, and yeah, we'll just do a quick time lapse of that. It's very simple. So then today we're going to go out and test all the stuff. So it's actually nice to go fishing.